In this episode of Growing Your Sense of Self Through Self-Defense, I'm going to talk about the two primary uses of language. Language is used, generally understood to be used to convey truth and reason and facts. So, for instance, we say, well, their flight leaves at 6 o'clock and we need to get to the airport 2 hours early, we need to be there at 4, and see, with traffic and this, we should give ourselves an hour to get there. So all of that sort of reason and using data and logic and trying to convey a proposition of we should leave the house at 3, for instance. When we're using language for other reason we use it is for making emotional connections. So some obvious ones of that is sort of like at a ball game or something. Yay, team! There's no truth value associated with that. There's no reason or logic. It's just yay, team, and all the other guys who like that team I'm with. Boo the umpires or boo the referees, and we're all booing them. That's an emotional rejection of some folks to make an emotional bond with the other guys who are for the team that didn't like the call. Basically, when crowds gather, the communication that happens as a crowd, not as a guy sitting aside of one another, is emotional base. What do we want? Rah, 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 rah. When do we want it? Now. There's not truth value in that. It's just we're bonding as a gang, as a group. Somebody's yelling, go teams. Like, well, I'm looking at it rationally. It was like, where do you want them to go? I mean, you want them to leave the stadium or go to... It's not that. It's just about connecting. So both uses of language are legitimate. The problem arises when there's a misunderstanding, when someone is using it in one way and the other person was expecting it to be that it was being used in a different way. A simple case is the wife asking her husband, does this dress make my butt look big? Well, if she's looking for sort of a rational thing and, actually it does a little bit, maybe you should wear that black dress instead. If that's what she was looking for, that's a good answer. If she was looking for emotional connection, something like, oh, honey, your butt always looks perfect. All right, that's a good answer. But if you got them confused and you said, oh, you said the second one, and she's expecting the first, and she goes there and maybe her girlfriend says, you know what, that dress doesn't really do you well. Now you were the liar to her. You didn't tell her the truth. And if you said, no, maybe that's a little bit makes you look big, and she was wanting the emotional connection, and maybe she's upset with you for a different reason. So the disconnect in communication can come when there's expectations, assumptions about what the language is being used for, and it's different from what it was being offered as. Now, often it's not, it seems pretty clear what it is, right? If you're in a crowd at a ball game, then yeah, it's emotional connection. If you're in some passionate experience, it's used for emotional connection. If you're sitting in an office and a conference room, it's for rational reasons. But often, for a low sense of self, they'll use language to make emotional connections when the receiver is expecting it to be about rationality. And the reason they do this is, as a low sense of self, they're looking for affirmations about themselves because they don't give them to themselves, so they're looking for others to give them. So they'll say things that they think others want to hear. And if they resonate with others, they get strokes. Yeah, all right, I'm with you on that. Okay, good. And then they feel this sort of connectedness. And truth and facts and reason and history, all that be damned. It doesn't matter. The point of the communication was, I was in need of getting some strokes, and by saying something a person wanted to hear, I got the strokes. Or vice versa. They say something that they were looking for, and I gave them the stroke. Okay, it's all good. But somebody else sitting there and said, wait, that doesn't make no sense. I don't think that's true. It doesn't make... then you have the disconnect, because I was offering it for emotional connections, and you were trying to take it as something that's rational or reasonable, and it didn't have a good truth value, so we start butting heads, and I think you're rejecting me because it wasn't offered that way. It was offered to get emotional strokes, and I didn't get them from you, so you were rejecting me. So this is a foundation or fundamental reason why we have a lot of failure to communicate, and it's because the use of language to make emotional connections when it's taken as rational is a common thing from a person with a low sense of self. That's a primary use. You see, it's one of the traits for a person with a low sense of self. They'll use language to make emotional connections. Now, those tend to be limited. So I'll tell you some things if I'm looking to get emotional connections from you and you're looking to give them to me and vice versa. I'll say things and it doesn't matter if there's any truth value to it or whatever like that. You're like, yeah, I'm with you, I'm supporting you, boom, 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 and we're good. But that's limiting, right? That's disconnecting us from reality, which is limiting our the fullness of our life, the richness of our life, our authenticity in our lives. Because all I'm using, this support that I'm getting, that I feel I'm in need of, becomes a crutch for me. And the crutches are limiting. You need to put the crutches away to be able to walk. If you keep using crutches, you never learn to walk again. So they need to be put aside. So relying on emotional connections, as a salve for a wounded soul, it doesn't enable the soul to heal. And it's the healing that we're after, the growing that we're after. So what I suggest as an exercise is to seek to use words, when you're not in the crowd or in a passionate, intimate kind of environment, and words are for emotional connections are better suited, but you're in a situation where the use of words is expected to be to convey truth and reason and logic and history and all of that. To focus on doing it that way. And a way you can do that is, first off, forget about getting emotional connections. In fact, in a sense, reject them. Say, I don't want them. I don't want emotional connections. I'm putting away my crutches. I'm going to stand on my own. And if nobody likes what I say, that's okay. Now, that's a scary thing for a person with a low sense of self. But it's taking your first steps. Like a child has to take their first steps. They can't just keep scootering around holding on to sofas. They got to walk free. This is walking free. This is thinking free. This is communicating free. So put aside the need for that, or the believed need for that, because it's really not helpful. Then the second thing you do is take something that you hold as a strong belief about a person, about a relationship, something important to you, or best of all, about yourself. A strong belief that you have about yourself and turn it on its head. So for instance, as a low sense of self, you might believe, you know what, I'm really not motivated. I don't have motivation. I don't follow through on things. If that's your core belief or a core belief about yourself, flip it on its head and say, no, I'm strongly motivated to succeed. But there seems to be things that get in my way. So take the opposite position of what you strongly believe. Stop gazing at the navel and look out into the external world. Force yourself to go to the external world and find instances in history, in your life. Here was a success that I had. Here's something I followed through on. Here's something that I started to, but I stopped. Now, since I am strongly motivated to succeed, what made me stop? Why did I get redirected? Was I sabotaging myself? Did something come in out of the blue, a distraction someplace? Take the position opposite to what you are holding as true and say, no, the opposite is true. This is sort of a Platonic approach to self-examination. Take the approach that the opposite is true. Don't care about anybody supporting you or not supporting you, and look to the external world for evidence, for data, for why the opposite is the case, not what you were holding to be true. When you do that, and start to do that more often, and look for other people to give you data, not to give you emotional support. I'm not looking for that. You stop looking for that. I don't care about that. That's holding me down. I don't want that. If it comes later, okay, it comes later. That's cool. But right now, I'm after connecting with the real world. Because the emotional support stuff, when I say things, I don't care about truth value, I don't care about this, I just want to get support. That's keeping me disconnected from the real world. That's what's life limiting. So put it aside. Now, sometimes that may affect relationships. Often it does. So the person who's an alcoholic, if he stops drinking, it's going to affect his drinking buddies, the relationship he has with his drinking buddies. They're going to want to keep trying to ply him with some alcohol or something. But if he's looking to make a change about his drinking habits, then the lifestyle that he lives is likely to change. It'll change for the better, but in some cases, some people will see it for the worse. Well, those were the people that were holding him back. Those were the people that were keeping him in the sauce. Those weren't in his best interest. You have to be your best proponent. You have to be the one that operates for your best interest. And in your best interest is aligning your inner world with the external world. And to do that, you have to get off of, I'm looking for emotional connections. Because those emotional connections are people internal worlds trying to line up with your internal worlds, but none of them align with the external world. None of them is going to help you get to where it's important for you to go, to be healthier. So there's another exercise for you to try. Take something about yourself that you firmly believe, that's not a positive thing, and flip it on its head and make it a positive thing and see the evidence for that in the real world. Because the likelihood is there's a lot more there than you realize and that you're willing to accept. Because when you're gazing at your navel, you miss what is out there, what other people see, what other people appreciate or love about you. Love about yourself. Embrace that and find it in the real world. It's not there in the inner world. That's what was keeping you back. Till next time, kamsamida. Toodles.